Now, families of Sandy Hook victims announced that they are going to sue Remington, which made the AR-15, which was used in the Newtown massacre. Now, those families believe that Remington, the distributors, the sellers, should be held legally responsible for how that gun, how their product is used. Now, the lawsuit may not go anywhere because of the bill you voted for, legislation that prevents gun makers from being sued. Tonight, what do you say to those families?
Well, this is what I say, if I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong. If you go to a gun store and you legally purchase a gun, and then 3 days later, you go out and you start killing people, is the point of this lawsuit to hold the gun shop owner or the manufacturer of that gun liable? If that is the point, I have to tell you I disagree. I disagree because you hold people, in terms of this liability thing, where you hold manufacturers' liability is if they understand that they're selling guns into an area that is getting into the hands of criminals, of course they should be held liable. But if they are selling a product to a person who buys it legally, what you're really talking about is ending gun manufacturing in America. I don't agree with that.
Well, that is not what happened. And I think it's important for people to understand. Because of the proliferation of guns, because of the epidemic of gun violence in our country, there were a group of cities, states, and other concerned people who, in the late 90s and in the early 2000s, were working on legal theories that they thought would force gun makers to do more to make guns safer and force sellers to be much more responsible. The NRA saw this happening, and they said, we've got to stop it. Last thing in the world we want is to have guns that you can only shoot with your fingerprint, or to have guns with such strong safety locks on them that they may not be sellable. So the NRA went to the Congress, and the head of the NRA has said this was the most important NRA legislation in more than 20 years. And they basically went to the Congress. I was there. I was in the Senate. And they said, give us absolute immunity. No other industry in America has absolute immunity, and they sell products all the time that cause harm, and they're held responsible.
Senator Sanders.
As I understand, as I understand it, what you're really talking about is not what Secretary Clinton is responding to. As I understand it, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but what you are essentially saying, what people are saying, is that if somebody who is crazy or a criminal or a horrible person goes around shooting people, the manufacturer of that gun should be held liable. And if that is your position, then what you are saying, essentially, if that is the case, as I understand it, it's not what Secretary Clinton is talking about. I agree with what she said. But if that is the case, then essentially your position is there should not be any guns in America, period.
That is,
now, I
that
understand.
is like the NRA position.
Can I finish, please? All right? And there are people who hold that view, and that's fine if you hold it. I think what you do is you hold those people who have used the gun accountable. You try to make guns as safe as possible, but I would disagree on that.
We're going to move on. Don?
Well, Anderson, I just want to finish because I know some of the parents from Sandy Hook. I want people in this audience to think about what it must feel like to send off your first grader, little backpack maybe on his or her back, and then the next thing you hear is that somebody has come to that school using an automatic weapon, an AR-15, and murdered those children. Now, they are trying to prevent that from happening to any other family. And the best way to do that is to go right at the people who you talk about corporate greed. The gun manufacturers sell guns to make as much money as they can make.
Senator Sanders.
You know, I think it is a little bit... Look, what happened at Sandy Hook, what happened in Michigan, what has happened far too often all over this country is a terrible, terrible tragedy. And we have got to do everything we can, as I mentioned a moment ago, to end these mass killings. But as I understand what your question is, and you know, you're not the only person whose heart was broken. I was there in the Senate when we learned about this killing. It is almost unspeakable to talk about some lunatic walking into a room. I mean, it is hard to even talk about. We all feel that way. But if, as I understand it, Anderson, and maybe I'm wrong, what you're really talking about is people saying, let's end gun manufacturing in America. That's the implications of that. And I don't agree with that.
We're going to move on. Don Lemon.
All right, thank you very much, Anderson.